Good morning. Good morning. The Committee on Education and Health will come to order, and thank you to everyone who's here. Clerk, please call the roll. Stella.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Stella's not here. Well, thank you. Thank you again to everybody. There are 45 bills on the docket today. And I really appreciate all the wonderful work of our subcommittee chairs. We will be able to go through all the bills with their assistance, and I anticipate that we will have good discussions on many of them. First, however, we do need to address one bill that, well, we've got a few bills that we need to take up outside of the subcommittee reports, and the first one is SB 76, patroned by Senator Durant. Is Senator Durant here? Yes. Oh, there you are. Thank you. Senator Durant, if you'd like to present your bill, and what we will do today as well, because this particular bill was not heard in subcommittee, we will hear testimony for 5 minutes on both sides, either in support or in opposition to SB 76. So, Senator Durant.
Madam Chair, would you prefer if I come forward or stay
Whatever
here?
is comfortable for you, that's fine.
I'll stay right here if that's okay. Thank you. Madam Chair, Senate Bill 76 seeks to give exceptions for child daycare centers operated by religious institutions. So we did hear this in subcommittee. But we had some testimony. This bill, this has been heard.
It was my understanding that it wasn't heard, so it has been heard? Okay. We'll still allow a few minutes of testimony.
Good. Thank you. Just want to make sure I hadn't forgot which ones I had. So what we heard in subcommittees, this was based on there had been some instances in the Commonwealth where we've had some religious-run, I guess, like summer camps of the like that have had some overreach in terms of crossing over with, I guess, scrutiny. And so what this bill seeks to do is follow what the Department of Education inspection priorities under Virginia Code 22.1-289.019 seeks, which requires the Virginia Department of Education inspectors to prioritize their inspection resources as follows: to first, inspections in response to complaints; to, inspections of licensed child care programs; third, inspections of licensed exempt child daycare programs that are publicly funded; and finally, inspections of other licensed exempt child daycare programs. Given the high degree and frequency of scrutiny that our preschools and daycares are receiving, the ODAX, which is Old Dominion Association of Church Schools, is seeking that these priorities are continued to be followed. And so what it seeks to do is move these church preschools and daycares to have that sort of that scrutiny to be followed under that set of priorities. And so that's what we're seeking to do. I hope it's the will of the committee to follow.
Thank you, Senator Durant. And as I said, we'll have testimony, 5 minutes on each side. Do you have individuals here in support of your legislation?
Madam Chair, because we did have some testimony in that subcommittee, I didn't ask them to come here today. So.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition?
Hi.
And if we'll start, thank you, there's a timer.
My name is Grace Reeve. I'm with Child Care Aware of Virginia, a nonprofit that works statewide. I've actually been working on this issue for about 10 years. In 2010, 7-week-old baby Dylan Cummings died in a child care program in a religious setting. Department of Social Services did an investigation. That investigation said not enough staff, staff weren't properly trained, unsafe sleeping practices. This went to court, and the court ruled, so sorry, this is a tragedy, but no laws have been violated, no rules have been violated. This is a license-exempt program. This is an issue for the General Assembly. We worked with the family whose baby died. In 2016, the General Assembly passed legislation to form a work group to review, at the time, the 14 categories of license-exempt care, super confusing to parents, 14 categories, and make recommendations. That report was issued to the General Assembly in 2016. Each of those categories was thoroughly reviewed. In 2018, the General Assembly passed legislation based on those recommendations from the bipartisan work group. And what that law did, enacted in 2018, was it reviewed the child day programs. It created kind of two buckets of child day programs. Bucket one, not childcare. Not childcare, in that bucket, soccer practice, Little League, piano lessons. In the second bucket, which was deemed childcare, were settings where parents pay and children go every week so that the parents can work. The religious exempt childcare programs were in that second bucket. What the law said was both buckets are going to be license exempt, but if you're in the childcare bucket, there'll be a few health and safety protections for children. You need CPR. You need safe sleep practices for babies. What this bill, SB 76, would do would be to take the childcare settings in the childcare in religious settings from bucket two, which is the childcare bucket, and move them to the first bucket, which is not childcare. So there would be no health and safety protections for children, because the legislature would then have said, oh, those settings, they're not childcare. Then this bill, in the very last sentence, repeals a completely separate area of the code that deals with religious exempt childcare settings. That section of the code requires a background check if you work in childcare and religious settings. It requires some staffing ratios, to make sure that children are safe. CPR. We firmly believe this is a step backward. We firmly believe we fought very hard over this 10-year period. There was a study group that reviewed it, and this would unravel those very bare minimum safety protections for children, and we urge that you oppose it.
Thank you. We have a minute and a half remaining.
My name is Ann Tatus, Education Policy and Child Protection Specialist. And Virginia Beach Daycare under investigation after child found outside unattended that was Bayside Christian Children's Learning Center found a toddler alone outside on the playground May 10th, 2023. Virginia preschool teacher faces child cruelty assault charges June 13th, 2023. Former Virginia Beach child care provider convicted of infant's death while in her custody, November 2nd, 2023. James City County woman accused of running unlicensed daycare where infant died, April 24th, 2023. March 2023, Blackwell Preschool, Richmond, sexual assaults in bathrooms. October 25th, 2023, King George County, 8 months after infant died in King George County Daycare Preschool. August 17th, 2023, Arlington Daycare failed to report alleged child abuse inspection fines. April 8th, 2023, Oxon Hill Daycare employee arrested after disturbing videos showed alleged child abuse. April 3rd, 2023, Chesterfield, preschool teacher slapped, spanked, grabbed student's neck. She was allowed back in class. March 14th, 2023, Williamsburg daycare employee accused of hitting child has been arrested. September 22nd, 2023, Radford daycare teacher arrested for child abuse. Why are we relieving any?
Thank you. Thank you. Time has ended. Thank you. And just a quick minute here.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, excuse me, my name is Lori Haas. I'll be brief. I'd just like to remind the committee that removing these child daycare providers from licensure would also remove them from the prohibition on firearms in these places that this body passed in 2020, thanks to Senator Lucas. I hope you'll oppose the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any comments or questions from committee for the patron?
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, just a couple of points of clarification. This bill does not seek to remove any of the protections that are already in place and will continue to be in place, as we heard when this bill was presented in subcommittee. And we did have testimony that for patrons, folks that came to support it, no one showed up in subcommittee to oppose this. So I'm a little bit confused why we are going through this process right now with testimony that was offered, and now in subcommittee we're only getting one side of this.
It was my understanding that the bill had not received testimony. That was an error on my part,
Okay.
but
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
we offered the opportunity for everyone to be
you.
able to speak. Committee members?
There is
Senator
Sorry, Madam
Favola
Chair.
has the floor.
Madam Chair, I guess I would ask the patron, what is the purpose then of putting in a bill that would exempt certain organizations from what I would consider moderate, not robust, but moderate requirements regarding licensure and some public health and safety requirements? What are you trying to achieve with this bill?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Senator Favola, as we heard in the subcommittee,
We carried the bill over in subcommittee. No, I understand. We didn't hear this in subcommittee, but go ahead. We're hearing it now.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a motion.
Let's hear the motion. Thank you.
I move to pass the bill by indefinitely.
It's been moved and seconded that the bill be passed by indefinitely. Seeing no further conversation, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 9, noes 5, 1 abstention.
Thank you. The bill has been passed by indefinitely. So we have another bill from Senator Durant, which I think we need to take a roll call vote. SB 407, Senator Durant requested that it be stricken, and we need to take a roll call vote on SB 407. Clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Thank you. SB 407 has been stricken. And then last week, we had SB 518, and as we always give an option for patrons to speak to a bill should the full committee vote go against the way in which the subcommittee had originally voted. And this is SB 518. Is Senator Williams Graves here to speak to the? Nope. We will hold off on addressing that bill until she has arrived. And then the next bill is Senator Pekarsky, SB 395. The full substitute was offered in full committee last week, but it went by for the week, and we will allow Senator Pekarsky to present her bill again.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. There was a lot of discussion. I think there were some concerns, multiple concerns brought up, and I've tried to assuage those concerns by bringing forth this amendment where we'll allow just the Board of Education to convene a work group consisting of representatives of student athletes, local school boards, individuals with expertise in adolescent mental health and screening.
Is this a substitute that we're looking at?
Sorry.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the substitute. All in favor?
Yeah.
The substitute is now in front of us.
Okay, sorry, Madam Chair. So instead of going ahead and passing this as a requirement, we'll put together a work group and let them work through some of the questions and concerns that were brought up so we don't have any inadvertent negative effects on student athletes or the process. And that is the substitute, and I hope everyone here will be able to support it now.
It's been moved and seconded that we report
Chair.
SB 395. Are there any comments or questions from committee members? Please use the Q feature. Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd have a question for the patron as I read the substitute.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as I'm looking at the substitute real quick, I see the work group on part 2, and I'm trying to read the code section real quick.
Okay.
So are we...
Total work group.
It looks like it's the same bill, but with a work group added. It's not like it's been replacing the bill with a work group to study if we should do something like that. Is that correct?
Well, no. So what the bill does now is, instead of us mandating that school systems will include this mental health as part of the physical screening, we are instead going to ask the work group to come together to evaluate how best to do that and put forth some policies. Is that clear?
Senator Suderline.
Madam Chair, I think it looks like we're still
right.
changing the code with the requirements that we were discussing last week about VHSL. At least the substitute I was handed. Is council, am I correct?
Okay. Can I see
Madam
that?
Chair, if I may.
Yes, counsel, please go
This
ahead.
substitute is, from my understanding, it was to be based on the substitute that was offered in committee last week, but to remove the parental opt-out requirement, to add the work group, to keep the 14-month requirement, and to keep the delayed effective date. It was, right now, I could amend it to further remove those additional parts and wholly remove the requirement or reduce it to just a work group. But as of now, the substitute that you have in front of you does retain amendments to the code section.
Thank you, counsel. And Senator Head.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just to speak to this, from my concerns about this to begin with were an athletic screening of physicals for playing sports is such a simple thing, and we're overly complicating this. And I understand what we're trying to get to, and that's fine if you want to have an opportunity to see kids more, but just let kids play sports, and just, let's not tangle this thing back up, because I think we end up complicating things. And if we're going to do a work group, I'm fine with the work group portion in lines 31 through 41, but that ends up being a Section 1 bill instead of with this, it would seem to me. And so as it comes forward now, it just, again, as Senator Suderline pointed out, I think this is just trying to get it done and then convene a work group on top of that, which I don't think that really accomplishes what we typically do when we're doing a work group. So I'm gonna be opposed to this one.
Senator Locke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My only concern is with procedure. We did adopt rules of the Senate that specified that if we are going to have work groups, that the process for approval of work groups had to go through Senate rules.
Thank you, Senator Locke.
Madam Chair?
Senator Pekarsky and then Senator Suderline.
Okay. Wait a minute. Let me think for a minute. Rookie mistake, Madam Chair. Rookie mistake. Then, am I able to withdraw the substitute, I guess, and go back to my original intent or not? Will it?
I think
Okay.
Senator.
How about, here is another option, Madam Chair, as we're working through this. You know, we were trying to work with folks to get to where we needed to be on this. What if this year I just strike Part B and leave the code change, which is the length of time?
Senator Pekarsky, I think that is the source of conflict and difficulty for many members on this committee, but Senator Aird has a motion.
Madam Chair and Senator Pekarsky, I appreciate you particularly working really hard to address the concerns of the committee around the legislation and the efforts to put the work group forward, which I actually think is a great recommendation on this issue. However, given the feedback that has been offered by Chairwoman Locke, I'm going to gently and kindly ask that we carry this over to the next session.
Second.
Okay.
A motion has been made to carry over SB 395, and it's been seconded. Is there any further comment? Clerk will open the roll on the motion to carry over.
Ayes 14, noes 1.
Thank you. SB 395 has been continued. And thank you, Senator Williams-Graves has arrived. And so, Senator Williams-Graves, in this committee, your report, SB 518, the subcommittee recommended reporting on a vote of 4 yes and 1 abstention. However, in the full committee, the bill failed to report, and in that case, we give the option for the patron to present the bill again and see if we might address some of the issues that were raised. So please go ahead and present your bill, and committee will ask questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee for your patience. Excuse me. Senate Bill 517 requires each school board to employ at least one college and career specialist as defined in the bill in each public high school in the local school division. The bill provides that each such individual shall be employed in addition to and not as a replacement for the required school counselor positions, specialized student support positions, or support services positions. Madam Chair and members of the committee, this is a workforce development bill that would prepare our youth and young people to be productive members of society. Counselors are already overwhelmed with ensuring that students graduate and there is a need for a focused position to assist students with life after graduation. This bill ensures that students have the tools to go to college if they choose to, or gives students guidance on apprenticeship programs and other certifications that they can receive to earn high-paying jobs without degrees. I would like to note that this bill was brought to me, or the bill idea was brought to me by a group of high school students, a part of the Virginia Young Democrats Teen Caucus, and they recognized the need in their schools for this position and wanted to see it throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Thank you, Senator, for the presentation. Are there questions from committee members? Senator, do you have a fiscal impact statement on the potential cost?
Now, see, Madam Chair, why'd you have to go there? Yes, we do. It's only about $17 million.
Thank you. And Senator, it's my understanding that the cost would be borne by the localities, and this would be an unfunded mandate then on our local governments. And so that was my concern last week. And I see, Senator Craig, you have a comment or a question.
I think it's a great bill. I support workforce development, and I'm very excited that that young group of kids came to you with this idea. I think it's something we should look at in the future, but having served on the school board an unfunded mandate right now would just probably tank us, because there's a lot of things that we've passed this year, and especially in public ed, that they have shall in it for our local governments and school boards. So let's maybe carry it over and work on this. I hate to see it die, because I do think it's something that would be great down the road, and I just thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you. Madam Chair, Senator Craig, I agree with you, having come from local government. My thought was that the state would pick up the tab. But in terms of carrying it over, we have had some interest from some of the business community in how we can make this work, and how we can work on maybe a partnership between the school divisions, the state, and the business community. So I am totally open to carrying it over to next year and doing some work on it in the off season and bringing it back.
It's been moved and seconded that SB 518 be continued to next year. Seeing no further comments, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. And now we are going to hear our subcommittee reports. Each of our subcommittee chairs will be giving their reports on the bills that were heard in their respective subcommittee this past week. Members, at your seats, you find the packets that contain any substitutes and amendments that were adopted by each subcommittee. We may also see some substitutes introduced in front of us during this full committee. Every bill that went through a subcommittee had the opportunity for public testimony, and so we are not going to be taking any additional testimony on these particular bills today. We will, however, hear from patrons if it is necessary. If your bill, you received a unanimous positive recommendation from a subcommittee, your presence may not necessarily be required. However, we will contact you if your bill hits a roadblock. And Senator Van Valkenburg has pressing personal business in an hour, and so I will ask him to present his subcommittee report first. Thank you, Senator Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and hopefully this doesn't take an hour, because it took us 4.5 to get through this docket last week. First up is Senate Bill 37, which is known as Sage's Law, which requires every public elementary or secondary school principal or his designee to, 1, as soon as practicable, inform at least one parent of a minor student enrolled in such school if such minor, A, expresses to any individual who is employed in such school that such minor is experiencing gender incongruence, B, requests that any such employee participate in social affirmation of said incongruence or the transition of such minor to a sex or gender different from the minor's biological sex while at school, and 2, request and receive permission from at least one parent of a minor student enrolled at any such school prior to the implementation at such school of any plan concerning that incongruence. We recommended passing by indefinitely on a 3-2 vote, and I so move.
Second. It's been moved and seconded that SB 37 be passed by indefinitely. Are there any comments or questions from committee members? Seeing none, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 9, no 6.
SB 37 has been passed by indefinitely. Senator Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Next up is Senate Bill 68, and first I need to have someone move the substitute. So I move the substitute.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the substitute. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? The substitute has been adopted.
This is about elementary and secondary schools and athletics and the participation in female sports, and creates a civil cause of action. Requires every school that competes in sponsored athletic events against such public schools to designate all interscholastic teams and intramural athletic teams sponsored by such school based on biological sex as follows: 1 for males, men, or boys; 2 for female, women, or girls; 3 co-ed or mixed. The bill prohibits any student whose biological sex is male and who has not physically transitioned to female prior to puberty from participating in sports designated for females, women, or girls. The substitute adds language to the provision prohibiting any substitute whose biological sex is male from participating on any interscholastic or intercollegiate sports team expressly designated for females, women, or girls. And so we recommended passing by indefinitely on a vote to 3-2, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that SB 68 be passed by indefinitely. Are there any questions or comments from committee? Seeing none, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 9, no 6.
SB 68 has been passed by indefinitely. Senator Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Next up is Senate Bill 75, which we recommended incorporating into Senate Bill 702 on a 5-0 vote, and I so move.
It's been moved and seconded that we incorporate SB 75, patroned by Senator Durant, into SB 702, patroned by Senator Subramaniam. Is this a roll call vote? Clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no 0.
SB 75 has been incorporated. SB 702 is now in front of us. Senator Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 702 is about early childhood care and education, an exemption from licensure for certain child care programs. It exempts military child care fee assistance or any child care subsidy paid by a branch of the Armed Forces of the United States from the federal funds that would otherwise render a child day program as a, quote, publicly funded provider, unquote. The bill also exempts from licensure by the superintendent of public instruction any child day program that, one, serves only dependent children of military personnel, and two, is located on a military base or federal property, and B is certified as a family child care provider by a branch of the armed forces. Do we have to move the substitute on that, Council, since it was incorporated? Do we need to move the substitute? Okay, so we need to move the substitute for that first.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the substitute. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? The substitute is in front of us.
And the substitute simplifies the bill by removing the section that unnecessarily amended the definition publicly funded provider. We recommended reporting with amendment in the nature of a substitute on a 5-0 vote, and I so move.
Second. It's been moved and seconded that we report SB 702. Are there any questions or comments from committee? Clerk will open the roll. Senator Favola, did you have a?
Ayes 15, no 0.
SB 702 has been reported, and I don't think it goes to finance. Okay. Next is SB 96, Senator Van Valkenburg.
Yeah, at the request of the patron, we move to continue Senate Bill 96 to 2025, and so I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we continue SB 96. Clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no 0.
SB 96 is continued. Senator Van Valkenburg.
Okay, next up is Senate Bill 142, which we recommended.
Is there an amendment?
Which we recommended reporting with amendment, and so I would move the amendment.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? The amendment has been adopted.
Okay, so the amendment's just a sunset clause for 2030 for this policy. This is a policy that had been in place at one time and lapsed, and it's about local eligibility for alternative routes to teaching. It requires the board to include in its teacher licensure regulations provisions that authorize each school board to, upon recommendation of the superintendent and in accordance with the criteria set forth in this bill, issue a one-year local eligibility license that is only valid within that school division and renewable for no more than one additional year to a person who's received a baccalaureate degree, has experience or training in a subject or content area as the school board and the superintendent deem appropriate, and is not seeking to provide instruction in special education or eligible for collegiate professional or postgraduate professional licensure. And so it asked the board to convene a work group to make recommendations on revising licensure requirements to increase flexibility. And we recommended reporting with amendment 5-0, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we report SB 142. Are there any questions or comments from committee?
point of clarification.
Senator Favola.
Although this bill would require the Board of Education to include licensure regulations that localities could use, this would be permissive on the part of localities if they wished to do this. Just a point of clarification.
Correct.
I expect to vote for the bill.
Correct. Yeah, Madam Chair, that is correct.
It's been moved and seconded that we report SB 142. Clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no zero.
SB 142 is reported with the amendment. Senator Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Next up is Senator Favola's Senate Bill 220, which we have a substitute for, so I move the substitute.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the substitute. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Substitute is in front of us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is the special education bill that makes a handful of changes to how we deal with special education involving around teacher training, around the IEP itself, and having a centralized state version of an IEP, having short-term goals for IEPs. The substitute made several changes to the original bill. There were some technical revisions. There was a removal of the definition of IEP. They modified some of the duties for the state parent ombudsman for special education, which is created under this bill as a way for parents to have kind of more of a voice. It added provisions to create some flexibility for the type of data system component and IEP template format school boards are permitted to use, because currently some localities use a different IEP formatting than the state, and the rest of the state does, and this bill is seeking to kind of homogenize that. It provides for the establishment of special education family support centers, revises aspects of the provisions related to professional development, adds some enactment clauses for the timeline of the bill. It establishes an advisory committee. It's a pretty big bill. If Senator Favola wants to add anything, she can, but this is to make some changes to make sure that we're doing what we need to do under special education and what we haven't been doing.
Thank you, Senator Van Valkenburg. Senator Favola.
Thank you, Senator Van Valkenburg. You did a good job summarizing a very long bill. And I just want to say that if we can adopt this bill, it'll move us, once it's implemented, and there's a long implementation period, it will move us closer to actually meeting the federal IDEA requirements, which is a mandate for us to continue to receive federal money. So I do hope it is the will of the committee to adopt this bill.
Is there a motion? What is the motion?
Not working. There we go. So we recommended reporting with a substitute on a 6-0 vote, and I so move.
Second.
And re-refer to finance.
And re-refer to finance, and I so move.
It's been moved and seconded that SB 220 be reported with the substitute and re-referred to finance. Are there any further comments or questions from committee? Seeing none, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no zero.
SB 220 reports as substituted and is re-referred to finance. Senator Van Valkenburg.
Next up, Madam Chair, is Senate Bill 352, which we had a substitute in subcommittee, but I understand there's a subcommittee, a different substitute for the full committee. So I would ask that we move the substitute that's been adopted for the committee.
We will move the substitute that's being presented to the full committee.
Yeah.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the substitute in front of the full committee be adopted. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? This substitute is in front of us.
I guess I'll start and then I'll pass it over if I get something wrong here. But in subcommittee, what we did is we narrowed this bill down dramatically so that it was really about teacher licensure. And it does two things. One is it sets up a kind of universal licensure. If you're looking on lines 34 to 37, it explains what universal licensure by reciprocity would be. You'd have to have a valid out-of-state teaching license with full credentials and without deficiencies, and you would have to have been teaching for at least 3 years prior. So that was one change. And then the second change was based on lines, if you're looking at lines 201 to 208, No, that's not right. That's not right. If you're looking at lines 220, no, that's not right either. What's the 213? The CTE part.
205, 250.
And so the second change we made in subcommittee, I apologize, is that we made some changes to how the board and localities interact when they're approving CTE teachers that don't have full licensure. This new substitute just takes that out. So the bill now is just universal licensure by reciprocity. Okay, so it's narrowed even more than we narrowed it in the subcommittee.
Thank you, Senator Van Valkenburg. And yes, the section that would affect our CTE programs, it just returns the language to what's original in the code, already in the code, the process that's defined. And so it simplifies what we have, and it also keeps in that enactment clause on the Department of Education's compilation of the report.
So we recommended reporting the substitute on a 5-0 vote, and this is, functionally the same thing, just without that CTE part. So I would recommend reporting the new substitute.
It's been moved and seconded that we report the substitute as has been adopted for SB 352, and I see Senator Suderline in queue. Senator, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My seatmate, who's the patron, just stepped out right before this was presented. Have you already talked with him about the substitute, I take it?
So, Madam Chair, Senator Suderline, I did not make this new substitute, but
we are happy to wait until he returns.
I will say for the benefit of everybody in the room that the change that's made in this new substitute isn't doing any harm, because what that was talking about was in the law as written, the board has to waive the process so that the localities can hire these CTE teachers who are not fully licensed. And the understanding of it is that essentially what happens right now is the localities just go into a form and submit, and it's like automatically waived. The board is not holding up any of these waived, it's not holding up any CTE hirings. And what we had done in subcommittee was take the board and put it on the back end so that localities could hire them, and then if something was wrong, the board could challenge that. There's people who think that's unconstitutional, but also the board wasn't stopping anybody anyway, right? So functionally, there's no change in terms of how things are being carried out, but we'll temporarily take that by.
Thank you, Senator. Yes, we will wait until the patron returns.
Okay, so the next step is Senate Bill 420. From Senator Head. It expands, this is about this Virginia School for the Deaf and Blind Board of Visitors and its membership. Expands the total number from 11 to 15, increasing the number of non-legislative members from 7 to 11. Board provides that of the 11 non-legislative citizen members, 2 shall be parents of current students at the school. 1 is a parent of a student who is deaf or hard of hearing, and 1 is a parent of a student who is vision impaired, and 1 represents the eastern region and 1 represents the western region. We recommended reporting 5-0, and I so move.
I'd second that.
It's been moved and seconded that SB 420 be reported, and I do have a question for the patron. I failed to, I think you addressed this, Senator Head, during the subcommittee report, but I just want to clarify. This request comes from the superintendent for the Virginia School for Deaf and Blind. Am I correct about
Yes,
that?
Madam Chair. That is correct.
Thank you, Senator Head. Are there any other comments or questions for the patron? Seeing none, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Thank you. SB 420 is reported. The next bill, Senator Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Next up is Senate Bill 433 from Senator Suderline, which is about policies to support students with limited and/or interrupted formal education. directs the board to develop and adopt policies relating to these students so they stay in and graduate from high school. We recommended reporting 5-0, and I so move.
It's been moved and seconded that we report SB 433. Are there any questions or comments from committee? Senator Favola.
I will just say this is particularly important for school districts with, high percentages of very diverse students. Oftentimes, students come to us from different countries who have had very little formal education, and yet they're admitted right into our high schools. They can't possibly graduate within that 4-year period. So this is a very helpful bill.
Thank you, Senator Favola. Seeing no other comments or questions, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no zero.
SB 433 is reported. Your next bill, Senator Van Valkenburg.
Madam Chair, should we go back to Senate Bill 352 now that Senator Peak's here, so that we can let him know that we're killing his bill?
Yes.
I'm just kidding, Senator Peak. That was a joke. So Senator Peak, while you were away, we adopted a new substitute for your Senate Bill 352, which does no damage to it.
But it's not Madam Chair, it's not the substitute that we had talked about that had the provisions for CTE, correct?
Correct.
But you are going to pass it this way?
Yes. And our understanding, Senator Peak, is that the board already has a process for automatic waiving so that the localities can hire these teachers anyway. So it's still going to be a smooth process to getting those teachers.
You think it will? Well,
Senator Peak, if I could.
Madam Chair, let's go ahead with what we got, and we'll just have to.
Senator Peak, if I could, first of all, apologize. I was working and with council till this morning just to make sure that we had this in a posture that is going to make it effective and efficient, and I did not get a chance to discuss this with you prior to committee. But as Senator Van Valkenburg indicated, we have a new portal. Kudos to our VDOE for a new portal that simplifies the process for filing the request for licensure, and this simplifies the process, and it's really not necessary then to add more to the process. So hopefully this gets at exactly what you are trying to achieve and makes it a more efficient process.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just seeing the new substitute. Let's vote on it.
Thank you. And if we need further discussion, we have opportunity to do so. It's been moved and seconded previously that we adopt the substitute as presented in full committee. Seeing no further discussion, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no zero.
SB 352. SB 352 reports with substitute.
All right. Next up, Madam Chair, is Senate Bill 434, and first I'll move the substitute.
Can you
move the substitute for 434?
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the substitute. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Substitute is in front of us.
Madam Chair, with the substitute, this is a bill about flexibility and instructional time. The substitute narrowed the scope to school divisions of innovation and innovative learning models, but we were still not comfortable with the language as it was, so we recommended passing by on a vote of 3-2, and I so move.
The recommendation from the subcommittee is that SB 434 be passed by indefinitely. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion or conversation from the committee? Seeing none, clerk will open the roll.
See, he left you hanging.
Ayes 8, no 7.
SB 434 has been passed by indefinitely. And your next bill, Senator Van Valkenburg?
Yeah, Madam Chair, next up is completing the pseudo-line docket is Senate Bill 435. which is a Section 1 bill that requires the Board of Education to permit school boards to administer during the 24-25 school year assessments as alternatives to the through-year growth assessment that was established by the board, provided that any such alternative assessment is aligned with the standards of learning. This doesn't get rid of end-of-year testing, which was one concern. I was the one no vote on this because I didn't like the 1 year, and I wanted to talk to more people about it, and if the patron's willing, I would like to make it 2, because I've talked to people who are okay with that, because I think if we're going to allow this, we should, with the idea being that we might have some more testing reform in the future, we would want to have a little bit longer of a glide path, and so.
I would second that amendment if that's your.
If Senator Suderline considers it friendly.
We have a friendly amendment, and Senator Suderline.
So.
I think that makes it, Madam Chair, I think that makes it better. I just tried not to be greedy and only asked for 1. So if people want to give me 2, I'm happy to take it.
Well, I voted for it because I voted against it because it was only 1, Madam Chair. So if we could strike 24-25 and make it 25-26, that would be the amendment. Wait. Oh, to 20.
The amendment has been moved. Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Seeing no opposition, the amendment has been adopted. And Senator Van Valkenburg.
And so then I would recommend reporting with amendment.
SB 435 has been recommended for reporting and seconded. It will be re-referred to finance. Is there any other further discussion? Seeing none, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no zero.
SB 435 reports and is re-referred to finance. Senator Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Next up is Senate Bill 440, which is about the employment of school protection officers in public schools. It would permit any local law enforcement agency to employ in an elementary or secondary school, pursuant to an agreement with the local school board, a school protection officer defined in the bill as a retired law enforcement officer hired by the local enforcement agency on a part-time basis to provide limited law enforcement and security services to public elementary and secondary schools. We recommended moving to continue on a 3-2 vote, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that SB 440 be continued. Any comments or discussion from committee? Seeing none, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no zero.
SB 440 has been continued. Senator Van Valkenburg.
Next up is Senate Bill 441. First, we need to move the substitute, so I so move the substitute.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the substitute. All in favor?
Aye.
Seeing no opposition, the substitute is in front of us.
This requires every school board to provide written verification of employment within 10 days of receipt of any request for employment verification from a former employee of the school board. The substitute omits the requirement that the verification be written and adds the word business to specify that the time frame is within 10 business days. We recommended reporting the substitute on a 5-0 vote, and I so move.
It's been moved and seconded that we report with substitute SB 441. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no zero.
SB 441 reports with substitute. Senator Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Next up is Senate Bill 468. The patron asked that we move to continue it to 2025, so I so move.
On request of patron, SB 468 is recommended to continue, and that motion has been seconded. Clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no zero.
SB 468 is continued. And Senator Van Valkenburg.
Next up, Madam Chair, Senate Bill 552, and there was a substitute offered in subcommittee, so I'll move the substitute.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt, I'm sorry, Senator Peake, do you have a substitute?
Yes, we have a new substitute, Madam Chair.
Will you present the substitute that you were offering to the full committee.
Should we move that? Should we move it first?
Madam Chair, this is the substitute I showed you, and Sub-Chair Van Valkenburg yesterday. This basically guts the original bill and makes it a best practices bill for setting out of attendance zoning. So, and this is also identical to what was passed out of the House 15-6.
Can the page give me a substitute, please?
To move the substitute.
Madam Chair.
It's been moved that we adopt the substitute. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the substitute. All in favor?
I know.
The substitute is now in front of us, so please go ahead, Senator Peak.
Yeah, as I said, it sets out best practices for out-of-zone attendance within a particular school district, and it just sets out the procedures by which schools should set up their out-of-zone attendance. It doesn't mandate anything. It is a may, and it does state that set it up so if you attend another school that has an opening in your district, that there is no tuition. And that is the main part of the bill. It's completely permissive, and it's just giving the Board of Education, allowing them to set out best practices for setting up out of zone.
Thank you, Senator Peak. We have a few members in queue.
The board shall do it, but the districts don't have to. So the board's going to set it up. That's why the shall, Madam Chair, in the front line.
Thank you, Senator Peak. We have a few folks in queue. Senator Locke.
I just want some clarification on, so the board is setting up guidelines for open school enrollment. But my question would be, wouldn't school districts already have policies regarding open enrollment if they have it?
Madam Chair, that is correct, but they're trying to make it more universal and transparent for all of the school districts. I believe I have someone here.
Thank you, Senator Peak. We're not going to be taking any public
anybody,
testimony.
if there were any questions.
Thank you. Senator Favola.
Related to Senator Locke's question, I'm reading this to mean if school systems already have a policy, they can retain that policy. There's nothing in this bill that would.
Is your mic on?
There's nothing in this bill that would require them to follow the practice that the state outlines. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Senator Favola,
Peak.
that is correct. So, as I said, it gutted the bill. It just sets out the practices to say set it up for other schools to look at, but a jurisdiction can do whatever it wants.
One other follow-up question.
Senator Favola.
Okay, Madam Chair, there is. So I'm a little confused here. The best practice would include a prohibition against charging tuition or fees. But if a school system already has a policy where there, for example, is a transportation fee for the student to go out of the neighborhood school and into another school, could that school system still retain the transportation fee if the best practice is, no, you shouldn't?
Madam Chair.
Senator Peak.
Senator Favola, that is my understanding. This is just going to set out recommendations for, and they may recommend don't charge, but also it's going to have recommendations for transportation and such things, but it will be permissive in those localities.
Senator Favola.
Madam Chair, I would offer an amendment to this because I think it's fairly confusing the way it's written. In line 19 and 20, I would recommend deleting lines 19 and 20 because that is confusing. It appears that you want the state to come up with a policy that there should be no tuition or fees charged, and if a school system already has that policy, it's going to put everything into conflict.
Thank you, Senator Favola.
So that's my amendment.
Madam Chair, that's a friendly amendment.
Senator Peak.
Well, let's got a few more lines. Yeah.
Somebody else would have to second it, though.
I'll second it. Well, did you make the motion? I seconded it. I can say I second it. We'll gut it further by eliminating lines 19 and 20.
We're just trying to help them get a
There is a motion to amend, but before we proceed, let's continue the discussion around the legislation that's proposed. Senator Peake, if we review this section in code, school boards already have the authority to create their own open school enrollment policies, and the way it's defined in school in the code, they have to define the application process. They have to identify how capacity is going to be designated. They have to report it. They have to provide guidelines on transportation and all of these elements. The elements that are being discussed in this proposal are already in code, but they are at the guidance of the school boards themselves. My concern, Senator Peake, is that we are making some changes that are really not necessary. School boards have these options already. Some school boards have their open school enrollment policies, and this is my concern, that we are working in a section of the code that already permits these elements to take place. Senator Peake.
That is the point. Every school district has a policy, and they're all different. And so what we were going to do with this bill is create a model policy that is permissive, so that the Board of Education can look at all of the jurisdictions, look at all of their policies for this stuff, and provide a model policy which is not mandatory on any district. And so we have all of these varying districts. We are trying to bring some transparency and a guidance for everyone who may want to see what other districts are doing, so they can go to the Board of Education and see one set of model policies. So whatever y'all want to do, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Peake. Are there any other comments or questions?
Madam Chair,
Senator Boyska.
I have a gentle motion that we PBI the bill.
It's been moved and seconded that we pass by indefinitely SB 552. Is there further discussion? Yes, Senator Favola.
Madam Chair, I just want to say I'm trying to get comfortable with this, and I simply can't, because I think it's going to set up conflict with policies school systems have already developed. So although I tried to help, I am going to be voting to pass it by, carrying it over gently. Is that what the motion is?
Definitely.
Right, I said I was voting for it.
It's been moved and seconded that SB 552 be passed by indefinitely. Seeing no further discussion, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 9, no 6.
SB 552 has been passed by indefinitely. Senator Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Next up is Senate Bill 563, and we're just going to go right into the substitute, because the substitute is a lot different than anything we talked about in subcommittee. So I'm not going to waste the breath. I'm going to move the committee substitute.
Thank you. The full committee's
The full committee
substitute. Yes. Senator Hackworth has a substitute to present to us on SB 563. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Let's adopt this substitute. It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the full committee substitute that's in front of us. All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? The substitute is now in front of us. Senator Hackworth.
All right, in the most important words of the Senate, I think there is peace in the valley on this finally. So I want to thank Madam Chair for her diligent work in helping draft this substitute, and also Subcommittee Chair Van Valkenburg for helping us on this. This is a step in the right direction, and it is limited to Planning District 2. This ensures that students are set up for success for college and career. We're going to meet every single month, and we are going to work with local and statewide partners. And we are going to come back on November the 1st. Mark your calendars, set your watches, because we are going to have a report that will absolutely blow you away. So we appreciate everybody helping with this draft and this substitute.
Spoken with appropriate confidence. Thank you, Senator Hackworth.
So, Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to report the substitute and just say that the patron has been, I don't know that I've seen a patron more passionate about a bill while I've been here, and so I'm glad we could get to a place where we can move the ball forward. So, move to report the substitute.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the substitute that's in front of us for SB 563. Is there any other discussion?
What does this do?
And it will be re-referred to Finance. Senator Locke has a question. Can you clarify exactly what the bill does, the substitute does?
Sure. Yes, ma'am. So what this does is this has the Department of Education in collaboration with the community college system and the Workforce Development Board, as we heard in Board of Education, also our industry partners getting around the table to say, how can we get our high school students more career ready? And so in working with the chair and working with the different ones, they felt like my bill was too ambitious. And this was the next step, was to get us all around the table and see if we couldn't come up with a plan by November the 1st to present back to the board.
Seeing no other discussion on the bill, SB 563 as presented and substitute is now in front of us. Clerk will open the roll. And re-refer to Finance.
Ayes 15, no zero.
SB 563 is reported and re-referred to Finance as substituted. Thank you, Senator Hackworth. I appreciate our conversations and your efforts to work for students in your district. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee.
And
All right.
Senator Van Valkenburg.
Madam Chair, next up is Senate Bill 586. First, I'll move the substitute.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the substitute. All in favor?
Aye.
No opposition. The substitute is now in front of us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a bill about student discipline and evidence-based restorative discipline practices. The substitute changes the bill to require that schools first actually initiate such evidence-based restorative justice disciplinary practice as opposed to language in the bill which required it. As opposed to the language in the bill as introduced, which requires the school to only consider initiating such practice and adds an exception to that requirement in circumstances in which the student is accused of a violation that involves certain enumerated crimes or if aggravating circumstances exist. So this is a bill that is getting schools to try to initiate more restorative-based practices on the front end of punishment. We recommended reporting the substitute on a 3-2 vote, and I so move.
It's been moved and seconded that SB 586 be reported with substitute. Are there any comments or questions from committee members? Seeing none, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 9, no 6.
Thank you. SB 586 is reported with substitute. Senator Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Next up is Senate Bill 619 from Senator Pillion, which is about trying to get kids back in school. And this was trying to attack kids who are long-term absent. We can't get them back to school.
Is there a substitute?
Well, hold on. And so this bill recommended reporting with a substitute on a 4-1 vote. The patron has asked me to continue it over because if you look at this absurd impact statement, the executive branch is saying that it's going to cost $1.2 billion over the next 2 years to get kids who are not coming to school to come to school. It is such an absurd abuse of the FISC statement that it's really it's really kind of contemptible. It's really frustrating. I've never seen something like this in my life. This is a bill that was trying to target kids who we can't get back into school and create policies to make them more likely to come back to school. And DSS put $936 million on the biennium, and the Office of Children's Services put $266 million on it. And that's insane. And I think that those offices should be ashamed of themselves. But I will follow the patron's will. I'd rather just jam it through and force them to do this. But I will follow his will and ask to continue it over to 2025. And I'm sorry if I'm frustrated, but that's insane.
It's been moved and seconded that we follow the will of the patron, but we have Senator Locke and Q who wishes to speak.
I will also follow the will of the patron, but I do want to make the statement that this seems absolutely absurd given the concern of this administration about absenteeism.
Senator Ayer, did you want to speak?
Yes, Madam Chairwoman, I just want to pile on and then we can vote. This administration had a program in place with Engage Virginia that was literally about working with a third-party entity to support our school divisions in combating absenteeism and doing the heavy lifting and hard labor of tracking down families and students and providing resources in instances like this. And they chose not to fund it and not to continue it midway through the academic year. And so to see now an additional attempt to combat this crisis, because that's what it is, and to see those numbers in comparison to what was being invested in the program that was in place is literally quite frustrating. And so I'm also sad that we're carrying this over, but I'm very frustrated at the way this has played out.
Thank you. Are there any other committee members who wish to speak? I think we all share the frustration knowing that this is a critical need to be addressed, but at request of patron, this bill will be carried. Is it continued? Is that the request? Continued to next year. And there is a second for that motion. Clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no 0.
SB 619 is continued. Senator Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Getting down to the stretch run. Senate Bill 627 from Senator Lucas. First, let's move the substitute.
Move the substitute.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the substitute. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? The substitute is in front of us.
Thank you. This is about establishing the College and Career Ready Virginia Fund and requires DOE and the VCCS to establish the College and Career Ready Virginia program, whereby each school board is required to offer each qualified high school student in the local school division access at the high school to dual enrollment courses that are sufficient to complete the passport program and the former Uniform Certificate of General Studies program, which is now called Passport Plus program, at no expense to students. This is about expanding dual enrollment. The substitute adds to the membership of certain advisory committees that are established by the bill. This recommended reporting with substitute on a 5-0 vote, and I so move.
Second.
Yes. Senator
Yes,
Lucas,
Madam Chair,
you have a substitute?
Yes, there is another substitute, so I would move the substitute and ask that council would respond to the line amendments in the substitute.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the substitute that's being presented to the full committee. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? So the substitute that's being offered to the full committee is now in front of us,
Started on line 401.
and council will present the change.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The substitute in front of you, the new one at line 401, and a little bit before that, adds in, it's a small change, it adds in the Online Virginia Network Authority along with the system and requires the system as in the Virginia Community College system along with the Online Virginia Network Authority to provide access to local school boards for their qualified high school students to complete the Passport program and the Passport Plus program at a public institution of higher education at no cost to the school board.
Thank you, Council. I will just make a note that the governor's introduced budget has removed funding for the Online Virginia Network Authority, so that is something Madam Chair might want to address in finance.
Indeed, I will.
Are there any discussion or questions for the patron or for the subcommittee chair on SB 627?
Move to report the substitute.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we report SB 627 with the substitute and re-refer to finance. Seeing no further discussion, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no 0.
SB 627 has been reported with the substitute and re-referred to finance. And Senator Van Valkenburg, we're almost at the end.
Two more. Next up, Madam Chair, is Senate Bill 707 permits public middle and high schools to establish CTE organizations regardless of if they have the course. We recommended reporting 5-0, and I so move.
Second.
SB 707 has been recommended for reporting, and that motion has been seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no 0.
SB 707 reports. Senator Van Valkenburg.
Last up, Senate Bill 723 from Senator Mulcahy. This is a broader, there's a substitute, so let's move the substitute.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the substitute. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? The substitute is now in front of us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This goes back to one of the very first bills we did from Senator Peake about women's sports, but this is broader than Senator Peake's bill. The substitute eliminates the provision relating to requiring students to establish biological sex for the purposes of participating on an interscholastic or intercollegiate team expressly designed for females, women, or girls by submitting a signed physician state attesting to such sex based on an examination of reproductive organs, levels of testosterone, or genetic makeup, and instead simply providing that a student's biological sex for such purposes shall be affirmed by a signed statement. We recommended passing by indefinitely on a vote of 3-2, and I so move.
It's been moved and seconded that SB 723 be passed by indefinitely. Are there any comments or questions from committee members? Seeing none, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 9, noes 5.
SB 723 is passed by indefinitely. And thank you, Senator Van Valkenburg, for your report.
4.5 hours into 49 minutes. It's pretty good.
And thank you for providing pizza last week to the people who were present. We will return now to our other subcommittee reports, and we will go back to page 2 and hear from Senator Boysko on health professions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We had a much shorter docket than Senator Van Valkenburg did. The first bill was my bill that is on here, SB 351. It is a bill that would have the Board of Nursing and the Joint Board of Nursing have a change to move the professions of advanced practice registered nurses and licensed certified midwives from being licensed jointly by the Board of Medicine and the Board of Nursing to be licensed only by the Board of Nursing. There was no action taken on the bill, and I, at the request, would ask that we continue it to 2025.
It's been moved and seconded that we continue SB 351 to next year. Are there any questions or comments from committee? Seeing none, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no 0.
SB 351 has been continued. Senator Boysko.
Thank you, Madam Chair. SB 568 had a substitute, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the substitute. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Substitute is now in front of us.
Thank you. The Senator Deeds is the patron of this bill. It deals with crisis stabilization services. It permits facilities licensed by the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services that provide crisis stabilization services to maintain a stock of Schedule 2 through 4 controlled substances necessary for the immediate treatment of patients admitted to such a facility. Under the current law, maintenance of stock Scheduled 4 controlled substances allowed under certain conditions, but stocks of Schedule 2 through 5 controlled substances may be maintained only if authorized by federal law and the Board of Pharmacy Regulations. It would allow automated drug dispensing systems, remote dispensing systems used by state facilities established pursuant to Title 37.2 Behavioral Health and Developmental Services. Facilities that provide crisis stabilization services, nursing homes, and other facilities authorized by the Board of Pharmacy that meet these certain conditions. The bill contains an emergency clause that directs the Board of Pharmacy to adopt and meet emergency regulations to implement the bill. The substitute adds the term remote dispensing systems in numerous places throughout the bill and specifies that for hospitals that contain a pharmacy, monitoring shall be reviewed by a pharmacist while on the premises of the hospital and in accordance with the pharmacist in charge's procedures and the Board of Pharmacy's regulations. And I so move. It was recommended. It was recommended 5-0, and I so move.
Second.
The motion is to report SB 568 as substituted. Are there any questions or comments for the chair? Seeing none, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no 0.
SB 568 has been reported with the substitute, and Senator Boysko, it's my understanding that Senator McDougal might want to speak to his bill. Is he here? Maybe we could just alert him in case he wants to. Shall we just continue on and come back to that bill in case he wants to speak?
Be happy to do that. We'll move on to SB 661. Senator Craig. This deals with electronic monitoring in residential rooms. It would give residents of each nursing facilities the right to place electronic monitoring devices in their rooms, including if they have a roommate or other people who are also residing there. Electronic monitoring is defined in the bill as a video or an audio monitoring or recording of residents of nursing facilities as a means of monitoring resident well-being. I know that this was brought to her by a constituent who had a specific problem, but the recommendation of the subcommittee was passing it by indefinitely 5-0, and I so move.
It's been recommended that SB 661 be passed by indefinitely. That motion has been seconded. Senator Boysko, if I could just ask if you could speak to some of the conversation around this bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes. So my understanding is that a constituent of Senator Craig's came to her with a personal situation and asked that we pass a law that would require every single nursing facility to give the facilities the right to place electronic monitoring devices in their rooms, even if they happen to have a roommate. There seems to be some privacy concerns that were raised during the discussion because you wouldn't have to ask permission, and I believe that Senator Craig wanted to speak on this as well.
Senator Craig, please go ahead.
It was only for private rooms. They had brought up that even with a private room, if the camera was aiming towards the door, if somebody walked past the door, and of course, we didn't have time to say maybe we could move the camera, but that's why it was only for private rooms because I knew there would be a privacy issue. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay. But the will of the body was 5-0 to recommend passing it by indefinitely, and I so move again.
Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded that SB 661 be passed by indefinitely. Is there further discussion among committee?
Madam Chair.
Senator Favola.
At this point, I am going to support the motion, but I think this issue is worthy of further consideration, so I would ask the patron to keep working on it, and I'd be happy to work with her.
Thank you, Senator Favola. We have a motion in front of us.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Senator Head.
Might in light of that, could there be a substitute motion to continue the bill to 2025?
We have a substitute motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded by substitute that we continue the bill to 2025. Any further discussion? Clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Thank you. SB 661 has been continued. And Senator Boyska.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There on SB 682, patron is Senator Suderline. There is a substitute, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the substitute. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? The substitute is now in front of us.
Thank you. SB 682, Madam Chair, requires the health regulatory boards within the Department of Health Professions to recognize licenses and certifications issued by other United States jurisdictions as defined in the bill as fulfillment for licensure or certification in the Commonwealth if certain conditions are met. The bill also requires such health regulatory boards to recognize work experience as fulfillment for licensure or certification in the Commonwealth if certain conditions are met. The substitute bill changes the bill to a Section 1 directing the Secretary of Health and Human Resources and the Secretary of Labor to convene a work group to review the universal licensure recognition for all regulated healthcare professions in the Commonwealth and any changes needed in the statute or regulation to accomplish such recognition. The bill does not apply to licensure for physicians or to dentists. And as I said, it was recommended reporting 5-0, the substitute, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we report SB 682 as substituted. My question, however, is for our Chair of Rules, because the substitute requires the convening of a work group. Senator Locke.
We know the rules.
I'll make a motion to go to rules.
Second.
Madam Chair.
Please turn on your mic.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Suderline.
Is there a motion before us that it be reported?
Yes, as substituted.
I want to make sure we follow Senate procedure, so I would instead like that it be reported and re-referred to rules quickly so that it could be there tomorrow. And if they like it,
Because that's my last meeting.
if they like it, I hope that they'll advance it out. But if they don't, I understand, but we should go through the proper channel. And so that would be what I would ask the maker of the motion to amend it.
Is there a second?
Second.
So the substitute motion now in front of us is that we report SB 682 and re-refer it as substituted to the Rules Committee. Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no zero.
SB 682 has been reported and re-referred to rules with the substitute. Senator Boysko, thank you for your subcommittee report, and we're now ready to hear from Senator Favola from the Health Subcommittee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will start with Senate Bill 141. Patron was Senator Mulcahy. First, there was a substitute, so I move adoption of the substitute.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the substitute. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Substitute is in front of us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What this bill does is it allows a nonprofit organization as defined by the IRS to prepare food in a home kitchen for an event that would be outside of that constituent's home base. So if you had a group of church ladies who wanted to make a spaghetti dinner and serve it to the local YMCA, this bill would allow that to happen without asking for a permit. The committee did put some conditions on and indicated that the event should not exceed any gross sales more than $3,000 in a calendar year. It was reported from the committee on a 5-0 vote, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that SB 141 be reported with substitute. Are there any questions or comments from committee members? Seeing none, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 14, no 0, 1 abstention.
SB 141 reports with substitute. Senator Favola.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 153, patron Senator Head. At the patron's request, the subcommittee moves that the bill be stricken.
It's been moved and seconded that we honor the request of the patron to strike SB 151. Clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Thank you. SB 153 has been stricken. And Senator Favola.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 176, patron Senator Favola, and I move the substitute.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the substitute. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? The substitute is now in front of us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What this bill does is, first off, it was a recommendation from the Behavioral Health Commission. It was also a recommendation from JLARC. And what we're attempting to do is create a process by which our state mental health facilities do not have to accept individuals who may have neurocognitive issues or dementia issues. And the bill actually has to set up a process now for ensuring that individuals with those conditions are served in the private sector. So there's a task force that is established to come up with recommendations on how individuals who are not appropriate patients for our state health facilities to be served in the private sector, whether that would require additional funding, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's a reenactment clause that the recommendations and that the outline of the bill, well, not the recommendations, but the outline of the bill come back to the General Assembly. Nothing will be implemented until the General Assembly acts in 2025. I do hope it is the will of the committee to report the bill. It does have to be re-referred to Finance, and it was the recommendation of the subcommittee that the bill be reported and re-referred to Finance. I so move.
It's been moved and seconded that we report SB 176 with substitute and re-refer to Finance. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no 0.
SB 176 reports with substitute and is re-referred to Finance. Senator Favola.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I draw your attention to Senate Bill 171, and the patron was Senator Favola.
178.
May I continue?
178.
I apologize, 178. So this bill is very straightforward. It directs the Office of the State Inspector General to develop a plan, just a plan, to fulfill its statutory obligation to investigate all complaints it receives regarding abuse and neglect or inadequate care at a state psychiatric hospital. The bill also requires that a plan be submitted to the chair of the House Committee on, I think it's Health and, we said Health, Welfare, and Institutions, but I believe they've changed their name, and the Senate Committee on Education and Health by November 1st, 2024. It was the will of the subcommittee to report the bill 5-0, and I so recommend that the bill be reported.
Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded that SB 178 be reported, and I see Senator Suderline wishes to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I see the annual report is supposed to be on December 1st, and I think that with the earlier pre-filing, I'd like to have reports earlier so that any of us that wish to file legislation based on the reports we're getting would be able to get a pre-filing draft in. And so is there any way we could move that report up? I think even if it were only 15 days to November 15th, that would still allow us to get that legislation rolling.
Senator Favola.
If that's the will of the committee, I could change December 1st to November 15th. Is that your request? That doesn't give the agency much time. I mean, because they have to submit a full report, a plan to us by November 1st, and then going forward, they would be submitting an annual report on November 15th, but that's only going to be a crunch for 1 year, because once we get the plan, the annual report is subsequent. So I consider your amendment friendly.
I would like, Madam Chair,
Senator Suderline.
I would like to move that amendment.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we amend the SB 178 to reflect a reporting date of November 15th. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? That amendment has been adopted.
Madam Chair, I move that we report Senate Bill 178 as amended.
It's been moved and seconded that we report SB 178 with amendment. Seeing no further discussion, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no 0.
SB 178 reports with amendment. Senator Favola.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 237, patron was Senator Hashmi, and this was this bill dealt with contraception and the right to contraception. And what the bill does is it makes provides that no claim to defend against a claim that a law, regulation, or policy violates a healthcare provider or patient's statutory rights to obtain contraceptive and engage in contraception. A party must establish by clear and convincing evidence that factors enumerated in the original bill, the law, regulation, or policy that is being applied, must hold up. In other words, this would be a definitive right to all contraceptive care. It models federal law, and what it does is it provides a right of private action in Virginia code. I think this is well worth our vote, and I will defer to you, Senator Hashmi, if you want to add to my comments.
I just would move that we adopt the substitute.
Second.
The substitute has, adoption of the substitute has been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? It's a substitute, and you spoke to the substitute. I have nothing further to add except to say that this protects the right to contraception in Virginia should there be action taken at the federal level to remove that right, as has been suggested by at least one of our Supreme Court justices in re-examining Griswold, the decision in Griswold. So there is a motion, and
yes, the motion was from the committee was to report this on a 3-2 vote. I so move that the full committee report this bill.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded that SB 237 be reported as substituted, and I see Senator Suderline in queue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may speak briefly to the bill.
Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate the legislation the last 2 years that you've brought and I've supported, seeking to expand contraceptive access across the Commonwealth. I think it's incredibly important that we do that. I think that abortion is a tragedy, and I think one of the greatest things that we can do to reduce that in the Commonwealth is by increasing contraceptive access, and that's why I enthusiastically look for opportunities where we can help people with that. So I have some concerns, though, from a standpoint of how it works as a positive right. I think that it's great when we keep trying to increase the access, but I have great concerns about how we go about bringing the Attorney General in and these other actions. So that's why I won't be supporting this bill today. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Suderline. Thank you. Does committee have any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion that's been seconded that we report SB 237 as substituted. Clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 9, noes 6.
SB 237 reports with substitute. And Senator Favola?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I ask the committee to draw their attention to Senate Bill 333. First, I will move that the substitute be adopted.
Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded that substitute for SB 333 be adopted. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? The substitute is now in front of us, and please explain the substitute, Senator Favola.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. What this bill does is it directs DMAS to come up with a plan amendment to our Medicaid plan that would actually ensure that there is some fertility preservation in cases where there would be significant causes, such as a cause of losing the fertility. And that may happen in cases where cancer would suggest surgery, radiation, or chemotherapy treatments would be needed. The bill also applies this provision to all insurance plans in the Commonwealth, any HMOs, or any insurance coverage that would be licensed by the State Corporation Commission. At the request of the patron, this was a pretty comprehensive bill. It would have had to go to finance. There were many moving parts. Although the committee agreed in concept with what the patron was attempting to do, the committee did advise the patron that perhaps more work was needed. So I will go back to, at the request of the patron, we would ask that this bill be continued with a letter from the chair to HERC, which is the Health Insurance Review Commission, and a letter to DMAS, and I so move.
Senator Favola, before we take up that motion, am I correct in understanding that we first would also adopt SB 335 incorporate SB 335 into 333?
That would help, yes. Would you like a motion to that effect?
Thank you, yes.
Okay, I so move that Senate Bill 335 be incorporated into 333.
It's been moved and seconded that SB 335 be incorporated into SB 333. Clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, noes 0.
Thank you. SB 335 has been incorporated to SB 333, and Senator Favola, you spoke to that incorporation already, and you've made a recommendation that the new SB 333 as substituted with that incorporation is now, the motion is to continue to 2025, and that motion has been seconded.
With a letter from you, Madam Chair, to HERC and to DMAS.
Recommended for continuing with a letter to DMAS and to HERC. And seeing no further discussion, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, noes 0.
SB 333 has been continued with the substitute and with the request for a letter to DMAS and to HERC. And I see Senator McDougall has joined us, and Senator Boysko is not here, but Senator McDougall, you wanted to And I apologize, was it a change or a substitute that you wanted to present to the committee?
Madam Chairman, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, this is to deal with a central fill pharmacy. The pharmacy board put in place, I guess, temporary regulation. There is a central fill pharmacy, which means all the prescriptions come into one place, they package them and send them back out in an attempt to deal with the technician shortage and burnout that we're dealing with. So went through the subcommittee. Their subcommittees, and staff will correct me if I'm wrong, struck out the lines on line 21, the sentence that begins with "and out of state," through the ends of line 23. Mistakenly, we struck out of state on 24, and so at the time we had subcommittee, we read it and we thought that needs to come out, but it needs to stay in because it's talking about something different. And then on lines 44, removed after pharmacist through lines 46 after located, which would take out the prescription of the ratio between pharmacists and technicians and would leave that to the Board of Pharmacy. So those things the subcommittee did. The one thing that the subcommittee did, I think at my request, which was an error, was that line on 24. Did I say that accurately?
Council.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also was under the impression that we wanted to unstrike or add back in what was stricken in subcommittee from lines 44 through 46.
Madam
But I
Chair,
can correct that. If
Madam Chairman, I think some people have asked for that sense, but I think that the subcommittee's decision probably needs to stand for this to continue through the process, leaving it with the Board of Pharmacy.
Senator McDougall and Senator Favola.
So at this point, I guess I am going to move the amendment as presented.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded that the patron's amendment be adopted. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? The amendments have been adopted. And Senator McDougall, I believe you indicated that you may continue to work on the bill and may offer some floor amendments then if necessary.
Madam Chairman, yes, I think that there is, in the community, there's still some difference between whether the Board of Pharmacy does it or we prescribe it by code. It's not my area of expertise, but my understanding is we've not prescribed a ratio by code before. So many of the pharmacists are requesting, particularly if this is to proceed down the hall, that's a big sticking point.
Thank you, Senator McDougall. So with the understanding that the bill has been amended with the patron's amendment this morning and that there may be continuation of further amendments on the floor or in the other chamber, the recommendation from the subcommittee was that we report the bill. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we report with the amendments. And seeing no further discussion, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no zero.
SB 607 reports with the amendments, and thank you, Senator McDougall.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. Appreciate you working with my time constraint this morning, too. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will continue with Senator Favola's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I ask the committee to draw your attention to Senate Bill 404. The patron was Senator Durant, and this was an administration bill, I believe, and what they were attempting to do was to remove any certificate of public need for psychiatric beds. The fact is there's a committee currently formed that is looking at expeditious review of several COPN items. Psychiatric beds are currently under the review of that committee. So we decided the better approach would be to continue this bill, and that was the will of the committee on a 5-0 vote. I so move that the bill be continued.
Madam Chair?
It's been moved, and is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that SB 404 be continued. Senator Durant, do you wish to speak?
Yes, Madam Chair, I just wanted to speak to, I first want to thank Senator Favola for working with me as we continue forward with this one. And I am anxious to see the progress that we do over the next year on this issue. Know that we know where we stand in the Commonwealth with the urgency we need for beds and as well as workforce. So I am looking forward to anxiously to make some more progress on this issue. So thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, I just want to add something from a policy perspective. Right now, the state has, to our knowledge, has not ever denied a COPN request for psychiatric beds, but there is some value in the state keeping a record of what is going on and what is out there and what our private sector is doing to help with the whole spectrum of providing quality care to those who do need psychiatric services. So I just want to put that on the record.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that SB 404 be continued. Seeing no further discussion, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Thank you. SB 404 is continued. Senator Favola.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I draw your attention to Senate Bill 497. The patron was Senator Carol Foy. And this had to do with alternative transportation for individuals who would be under a TDO. The process, of course, would be usually a Community Services Board employee or contracted medical provider would evaluate a patient, and an order would be sent to the magistrate. Magistrate can then make a determination on the transportation process for an individual going to receive care. This, again, is under a TDO. And this bill would allow for alternative transportation opportunities, possibly family members or relatives and friends. We did believe this was a good bill. There is an amendment, so I will move that the amendment be adopted.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? The amendment has been adopted.
And Madam Chair, I would just add that the individual would have to be available to take custody of the TDO patient within 6 hours, so it would have to be a quick transfer. But it was the will of the committee to report the bill on a 5-0 vote, and I so move.
It's been moved and seconded that SB 497 be reported as amended. Any further conversation? Seeing none, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no zero.
SB 497 reports with amendment. Senator Favola.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I ask the committee to draw their attention to Senate Bill 499. Patron was Senator Carol Foy. It had to do with the donation banks for human milk and health insurance coverage. There was a substitute offered in the committee, and I move that the substitute be adopted.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the substitute. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? The substitute is in front of us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The substitute laid out a framework for the Department of Health, the regulatory process for licensing and ensuring that the donor milk was safe and of quality, certain quality requirements were met. And the bill also requires that our state plan for medical assistance services include a provision for the payment of Medicaid incurred in the provision of the pasteurized donor milk. So for our lower income moms who need to access a donor human milk bank, we would be covering that under our state Medicaid plan. I can go into more detail, but that is essentially the bill. And it was the will of the committee that the bill be reported, and it has to be re-referred to finance, and I so move.
It's been moved and seconded that we report SB 599 as substituted and re-refer to finance. Is there any discussion, or are there any questions from committee? Seeing none, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no 0.
SB 499, reports with substitute and is re-referred to Finance. Senator Favola.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I ask that the committee turn your attention to Senate Bill 546, patron with Senator Bagby. And there is a substitute to Senate Bill 546, and I so move.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the substitute. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Seeing none, the substitute is in front of us. Senator Favola.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was a very emotional issue before our committee. And what this allows is that if an individual is the subject of an emergency custody order, which would require that the individual probably go to one of our psychiatric facilities for evaluation and treatment, the bill would allow the institution to allow a family member to be with the individual, to comfort the individual, if it was the will of the patient. There was a very moving story that came before the committee, and we believe that this law will, if it becomes law, will enable a de-escalation of issues, provide some comfort to a patient when a family member who knows that patient, is familiar with that patient, can be there and assure the patient that everything will be okay. I do hope it is the will of the committee to report the bill. It was the committee reported it on a 5-0 vote.
It's been moved and seconded that SB 546 be reported with the substitute, and I want to thank Senator Bagby for bringing this necessary bill to us, and certainly thank the family members and the community members who have addressed how critical this need is, and that no harm come to individuals and patients in distress. So thank you for the family who has been working so assiduously on this concern. The recommendation is that we report with substitute SB 546. Seeing no other discussion, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no 0.
SB 546, reports with substitute.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I ask that the committee now draw your attention to Senate Bill 575, patron with Senator Obenshain, and I move that the substitute be adopted.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the substitute. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? The substitute is in front of us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What this bill does is in cases where a youth has actually had a hospital stay and a discharge plan has been developed, it would require in certain cases that the discharge plan be released to a counselor at the school, and these would only be in cases where the discharge plan would note that perhaps there were threats of violence or potential physical harm that the student was enduring. And we also, in committee, the amendment we adopted required parental notification so parents would know when the discharge plan was being shared with a school official. And we also allowed the parent, upon written request, to refuse to have such information shared. This was a very robust conversation. It was carried over twice in our committee. Senator Obenshain did work with stakeholders, including the statewide organization of community services boards. I think this is in a reasonably good place where the rights of the child and the rights of the parents are protected, but the school is also able to get a more complete picture of the conditions that a student is undergoing and perhaps be able to bring more services to that student as well. It was the will of the committee that we report the bill as amended. We voted 5-0 to report as amended.
Is there a second? SB 575, the motion is to report as amended or with the substitute. Any further comments or questions from committee? Seeing none, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no zero.
SB 575, reports with substitute. Senator Favola.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I ask that the committee draw its attention to Senate Bill 592. The patron was Senator Salim, and what this bill did is it directed the Department of Medical Assistance Services to create a preferred drug list. And we were very interested in the bill, but it is the will of the committee that the bill be continued, and the patron is in agreement with that. So I move that the bill be continued.
It's been moved and seconded that SB 592 be continued. Are there any questions or comments from committee? Seeing none, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Thank you. SB 592 is continued. Senator Favola.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I draw your attention to Senate Bill 671, and there was a substitute, so I move that the substitute be adopted.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the substitute. All in favor?
Aye.
Substitute has been adopted and is now in front of us.
Madam Chair, this was a rather robust conversation in committee. What this bill essentially deals with is the fact that minors under the age of 18 shall not have any transgender affirming care without the consent of the parent. And the bill goes on to establish other criteria around transgender affirming care. It was the will of the committee to recommend that the bill be passed by indefinitely on a 3-2 vote, but I will allow Senator Peake to further elaborate if he so wishes.
Thank you, Madam.
Before we have a motion that from the subcommittee that that this bill be passed by indefinitely. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded that SB 671 be passed by indefinitely. We're now open for discussion. Senator Peake.
Madam Chair, I understand, and I don't want to argue it, but I just want to point out a lot of people at the subcommittee said this never happens. They don't do it to juveniles. Don't worry, I'm making stuff up. So on the news yesterday, father loses legal battle to stop his son 8 from changing gender. So it is happening.
Thank you, Senator Peake. Are there any other comments or questions from our committee?
Again, I will just say, Madam Chair, that minors cannot accept those kind. There's a lot of healthcare laws that require parental consent on treatments, and that's where the committee came down. We were going to follow the current laws.
Thank you, Senator Favola. Seeing no further discussion, we have a motion in front of us that SB 671 be passed by indefinitely. Clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 9, no 6.
SB 671 has been passed by indefinitely. And Senator Favola, does that conclude your report?
Yes, Madam Chair, it concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. And because the Higher Education Subcommittee had fulfilled its responsibilities a week early, we have no report from Higher Education, and therefore the business of this committee is concluded for today. We are adjourned.
Virginia, Richmond, Virginia.